Hello everybody, welcome to Nob End Site of Special Scientific Interest. We've come here today with the Wednesday Wildlife Volunteers to do a little bit of scrub removal. The name Nob End actually refers to the Old English word knob, which means a rounded promontory, and specifically that's the one of Wellfield House, which rises above the lower area, which, as I say, would have been a floodplain back in the 1700s before all the waste was dumped. We're located at the confluence of two rivers, so we've got the Crowle coming from Bolton behind us and the Irwell coming from Ramsbottom and Bury and Radcliffe on the other side, and we're right where then those two rivers join. On the other side of us we've got the Manchester, Bolton and Bury Canal, so we're on quite an interesting little triangle of land. This site's really a product of the industrial heritage that was in this area. So in about the 1770s there was a mill on the site which produced sulphuric acid for the bleaching works that were all around this area. Later on, in the early 1800s, that changed to produce something called washing soda, which was being used in all the cotton mills that were around the area as well. Now, to produce that washing soda, you also had to produce something called LeBlanc waste. So it was called the LeBlanc process which produced this washing soda. And for each ton of the actual products that you wanted, you got 2 tons of a highly caustic alkali waste. Now, that was just dumped all around the mill. And where I'm standing is actually 10 metres above where the level was back in the 1770s. So it's been gradually built up and built up and built up as they were dumping all that waste. Now that had a really bad impact on the other wildlife around the area, and it led to all the trees along the river valley dying, it led to our hedges dying off, and it meant that you couldn't plant anything at all around this area. And because of that, there was even an Act of Parliament which was aimed mainly at LeBlanc factories to try and stop them from releasing so much hazardous material into the wider area. Now, local legend has it as well that underneath our feet there's an entire mill buried inside that. Now, I'm not entirely sure how true that is, but it's quite a nice little legend. Now, the process of producing this washing soda was highly unprofitable, and Edward Wilson, who owned the factory, actually went bankrupt 3 times as a result of that. And eventually all that industry died away and the site was almost forgotten about, and was deemed a bit of an eyesore really, as nothing would grow here at all. The process of weathering created a very thin layer of soil on the surface, and that meant that certain plants could start growing here again. Now that was basically forgotten about until about the 1960s, when a group of school children came down here and picked some of the flowers, or went back up to the school and the teacher told them off and said, "Where have you got them flowers from? You've been picking them out of somebody's garden." So then kids brought the teacher back down here and they had a look and they found all sorts of really rare flowers, things like heath spotted orchids and common spotted orchids and hellebreens and blue-eyed grass and all these wonderful really rare plants, muskmallow and all sorts of things. That meant that the site was a little bit more famous then, and people started taking more notice of it, and in 1988 it was designated as a site of special scientific interest, which in Britain is basically the highest level of protection that a nature area can have. The soil conditions that allow those plants to grow are very calcareous, and the only other place around this area, around Lancashire, that you get those is all the way up in Morecambe Bay and Arnside and Silverdale and that kind of area. So that makes it very, very important locally, because the plants you find here you just don't get anywhere else. Now, these LeBlanc sites, there's only 4 of in the world, or 4 that are known I should say. One of them here, one over in Farnworth, one in Wigan and another one in St Helens, so they're all in Lancashire as well, which is really good. Over time, because these sites are so unique, nobody's really known the very best way to manage them. So they've basically been carrying on clearing off scrub and keeping them open and allowing these plants to come through. Now that scrub keeps creeping in, so we've come here today with the Wednesday Wildlife Volunteers to try and clear off a little bit of that scrub. Now we're not taking all of it out, we're just doing a third in our little patch that we're working on, and that means that there's still lots of hawthorn and lots of scrub there for birds like fieldfare and redwings and missel thrushes. This is a particularly good time to visit the site as well, because Wilson's Bridge behind us, named after Edward Wilson who owned the mill here, has recently reopened as United Utilities have replaced it. So now you can do a really nice walk back along the River Crowle to Moses Gate and then back along the Manchester, Bolton and Bury Canal to here again. As the two rivers, the Irwell and the Crowell, meet here, it's a really good point as well to go off in different directions. So you can head off towards Radcliffe and you can get to places like Elton Reservoir where there's lots of rare birds quite often. You get things like peregrine falcons. Or you can head back along the Irwell and you can get to Clifton Country Park or Phillips Park, and you get right the way into the centre of Manchester and right into the Manchester Ship Canal as well. So it's really worth coming to see.
Hi, I'm Charlotte and I'd like to introduce you to the outdoor kitchen here at the Hive. The Hive is a local food growing project, but we've got lots of other interesting things going on as well, like the outdoor kitchen that you can see here.